My name is Landon Pierce. I am 20 years old, and 2 months ago, I saved my father from marrying a professional con artist who had already stolen over $2 million from 3 other men. The hardest part was not finding the evidence, or going to the FBI, or even watching her get arrested. The hardest part was that, for most of the investigation, my father hated me for it. He thought I was jealous, controlling, unable to accept that he had moved on after the divorce. He chose her over me, repeatedly, until I finally played him the recording that proved everything. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. My parents got divorced 2 years ago, right after I graduated high school. It was not a dramatic divorce, not the kind with screaming matches and thrown dishes. It was sadder than that. It was the kind where 2 people realize they have grown into strangers living in the same house, and they are both tired of pretending. My mom wanted to travel and pursue art. My dad wanted stability and routine. They had stayed together for me and my little sister, Katie, who was 14 when they split. But once I was 18 and heading to college, they decided there was no reason to keep up the facade. The divorce was civil. They sold the family house and split everything 50-50. Mom moved to Santa Fe to do the art thing she had always talked about. Dad bought a nice condo closer to his work. Katie split her time between them, though she spent more time with Dad because she did not want to change schools. And me, I went off to State University 2 hours away, visiting on holidays and some weekends. For the first year after the divorce, Dad seemed okay. Sad sometimes, quieter than he used to be, but okay. He threw himself into his work as a commercial real estate developer, which had always been his focus anyway. He had done well for himself over the years, built up a solid business, made smart investments. He was not rich exactly, but he was comfortable, very comfortable, the kind of comfortable where money was not something you worried about on a daily basis. Then, about 6 months ago, everything changed. Dad met someone. Her name was Melissa Crawford, and according to him, she was perfect. He told me about her during one of our weekly phone calls. He sounded different, excited, young. He said he had met her on one of those dating apps for professionals, that she was 35, worked in marketing, loved hiking and cooking and old movies. She was beautiful, he said, smart, easy to talk to. They had so much in common. I was happy for him. Really, I was. Dad had been alone for over a year, and he deserved to find someone who made him happy. Mom had already started seeing someone in Santa Fe, some artist guy named River, who wore crystals and talked about energy. If she could move on, Dad could too. I met Melissa for the first time about 3 weeks after Dad started dating her. He invited me home for a weekend, said he wanted me to meet her, that it was important to him that I liked her. I drove home on a Friday afternoon in late March, looking forward to meeting the woman who had put the light back in my father's eyes. She was beautiful. I will give her that. Tall, probably 5'8", with dark hair that fell in perfect waves past her shoulders, green eyes, a smile that looked like it belonged in a toothpaste commercial. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, nothing flashy, but she had this presence about her. Confident, polished, the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. "Landon," she said when Dad introduced us, giving me a hug like we were old friends. "Your dad has told me so much about you. It is so great to finally meet you." We sat down to dinner, which Melissa had cooked. Chicken piccata with roasted vegetables and homemade bread. It was delicious. She asked me questions about school, about my major, about my friends. She laughed at my jokes. She complimented the apartment I shared with my roommates, which she had never seen, but Dad had apparently described to her. She was charming, warm, everything you would want in a potential stepmother, but something felt off. I could not put my finger on it at first. She was saying all the right things, doing all the right things, but it felt rehearsed somehow, like she had studied for this conversation, and some of her questions felt a little too specific. She asked about my tuition, whether I had scholarships or student loans. She asked if Dad was helping me financially with school. She asked about the condo, how long Dad had owned it, whether he was planning to stay there long term. She asked about his business, whether he had partners, how many properties he managed. At the time, I told myself I was being paranoid. She was just getting to know Dad's life. Of course she would ask questions. That is what people do when they are dating. But there was something in the way she asked, something calculated, that made me uncomfortable. After dinner, Melissa excused herself to take a phone call. "Work emergency," she said apologetically. "I will just be a minute." She went into the other room, and I could hear her voice, low and serious, but could not make out the words. Dad looked at me with this hopeful expression. "So, what do you think?" "She seems nice," I said, which was true. She did seem nice. "You really like her, huh?" "Landon, I think I am falling in love with her," he said, and my stomach dropped. 3 weeks. He had known her for 3 weeks, and he was falling in love. My father, who was normally so careful, so analytical, so slow to make decisions, was falling in love with a woman he barely knew. "That is great, Dad," I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. "I am happy for you. But do not you think it is a little fast? You have only been dating for a few weeks." His face fell a little. "I know it seems fast, but when you know. Your mother and I, we grew apart slowly over years. But with Melissa, everything just feels right. Easy, like it is meant to be. I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to believe that my dad had found someone special, that he deserved happiness after the sadness of the divorce. But that feeling of unease would not go away." Melissa came back from her phone call looking stressed. "I am so sorry," she said. "There is a crisis at work. I have to go in tomorrow morning to handle it. On a Saturday. Can you believe it?" "What do you do again?" I asked. "Marketing consultant," she said smoothly. "I work with small businesses to develop their brand strategies. One of my clients is having a social media crisis and needs immediate damage control." It sounded plausible, but later, when I was lying in bed in Dad's guest room, I kept thinking about it. Something about her explanation felt too smooth, too prepared, like she had the answer ready before I even asked the question. The next morning, Melissa left early to go to her supposed work crisis. Dad made breakfast, and we sat at the kitchen table eating pancakes and drinking coffee. He looked happier than I had seen him in years. "She is something special, is not she?" he said. "Yeah, Dad. She seems great." "I know you are probably worried," he said. "I know it is fast. But Landon, I am not getting any younger. I am 52 years old. I spent the last 5 years of my marriage being unhappy. I do not want to waste any more time. When you find someone who makes you feel alive again, you hold on to that." I nodded, because what else could I say? He was an adult. He could make his own decisions. And maybe I was wrong. Maybe Melissa was exactly who she said she was, and my weird feeling was just me being overprotective. But then something happened that confirmed my suspicions. I was helping Dad clean up from breakfast when his phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned. "It is the bank. I should take this." He went into his bedroom to answer the call, and I continued loading the dishwasher. A few minutes later, he came back looking confused. "That was weird," he said. "What?" "The bank called to confirm some changes to my account. They said someone had tried to add an authorized user yesterday, but the request seemed irregular, so they wanted to verify. But I did not try to add anyone to my account." My blood ran cold. "What kind of account?" "My main checking account, the one I use for everything. They said the request came from online banking, but I have not logged into online banking in days." "Dad, you need to change your passwords right now," I said. Someone might have access to your accounts." "I am sure it is just a mistake," he said, but he looked worried. "Dad, seriously, change your passwords. All of them. Check your credit report. This could be identity theft." He agreed, and we spent the next hour going through his online accounts, changing passwords, setting up two-factor authentication. But the whole time, I was thinking about those questions Melissa had asked at dinner. About his accounts, about his properties, about his business. I did not want to believe it. I did not want to think that this woman my father was falling in love with could be trying to steal from him. But I could not ignore the coincidence. Melissa shows up, starts asking questions about his finances, and suddenly someone is trying to access his bank accounts. After I changed all his passwords, I made an excuse about needing to get back to campus early to work on a project. Dad seemed disappointed, but he understood. As I drove back to school, I could not stop thinking about Melissa, about her perfect smile, and her perfect dinner, and her two smooth answers, about how she had appeared in Dad's life like a miracle exactly when he was most vulnerable. I decided to do some digging. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and started searching. I began with the basics. Melissa Crawford, age 35, marketing consultant. I found a LinkedIn profile that matched her description. Marketing consultant, freelance, based in our city. The profile looked professional enough, with recommendations from several small businesses. But when I clicked on those businesses, half of them did not seem to exist anymore. Their websites were down or led to dead links. The other half looked legitimate, but when I called them pretending to be a potential client asking for references, none of them had ever heard of Melissa Crawford. That was red flag number 1. Next, I searched for her on social media. I found a Facebook profile with the name Melissa Crawford that had photos matching the woman I had met. But the profile was only 8 months old. All the posts and photos started from 8 months ago. No history before that. No tagged photos from friends. No evidence of a life before that date. Red flag number 2. I tried reverse image searching one of her profile photos. And that is when things got interesting. The photo appeared on 3 other websites. One was an Instagram account under the name Melanie Cross. Another was a Pinterest account under Melissa Carter. And the third was a now-deleted Facebook profile that someone had archived under the name Miranda Collins. Same woman, different names, different cities, different backstories. My heart was racing. This was not a coincidence. This was not a mistake. This was a pattern. I dug deeper. I searched for each of those names combined with words like scam and fraud and con artist. And I found something that made my stomach turn. A forum for victims of romance scams. A thread from 2 years ago where a man named Gerald Hopkins described being scammed by a woman named Melanie Cross who matched Melissa's description exactly. According to Gerald's post, Melanie had met him on a dating app. She was beautiful, charming, perfect. She moved fast. Said she loved him within a week. Moved in within a month. She asked questions about his finances, seemed interested in his life and his business. Then slowly she started asking for help. Her mother was sick and needed expensive treatment. Her car broke down and she needed a new one. Her business was having cash flow problems and she needed a loan. Over 6 months, Gerald gave her nearly $300,000. Then one day, she disappeared, just vanished, along with the money. Gerald had filed a police report, but there was no evidence of fraud because he had given her the money willingly. The police said it was a civil matter. Gerald lost everything and had no way to get it back. I felt sick. I kept reading. There were other victims in the thread. Different names, different cities, but the same pattern. Beautiful woman meets wealthy older man online. Moves fast. Asks for money. Disappears. But none of them had identified her as Melissa Crawford. She had changed her name again, upgraded her game, and now she had her sights set on my father. I needed proof, real proof that would convince Dad, and maybe even the police. So I did something I am not proud of. I hacked into Dad's computer. I knew his passwords, because I had just helped him change them. I used remote access software that I told him to install for tech support, and I logged into his computer from my apartment. I went through his emails, his browser history, his documents. I was looking for anything that would show me what Melissa was really doing. What I found was worse than I imagined. Dad had been communicating with Melissa through email and text. The texts I could not access without his phone, but the emails were all there. And they told a story that made me furious. Melissa had been slowly, carefully asking Dad to make her part of his financial life. It started small. She suggested they get a joint credit card for date expenses, just to make things easier. Dad agreed. Then she mentioned that she was having trouble with her landlord and might need to move soon. Dad offered to let her move in with him. Then she said she was worried about emergencies. What if something happened to him, and she could not access funds to help? She suggested he add her as a beneficiary to some of his accounts, just in case. Every request was framed as being about their relationship, about trust, about building a future together. And Dad, who was lonely and in love and desperate to believe he had found his person, was agreeing to everything. I also found the dating app messages between them from when they first started talking, and that is when I noticed something strange. Melissa had been the one to initiate contact. She had been the one to ask him out. She had been the one to move things forward at every stage. And in those early messages, she had asked very specific questions about his work, his income, his living situation. She was profiling him, figuring out how much he was worth. This was not love. This was a calculated con. And my father was the mark. I took screenshots of everything. I saved copies of every email, every message, every document. Then I started researching romance scams and financial fraud. I learned that what Melissa was doing was incredibly common, but also incredibly hard to prosecute. Unless she actually stole money or committed identity fraud, it was just a relationship. And even if she did steal, most victims were too embarrassed to report it. But I also learned that if I could prove she had done this before, if I could show a pattern of behavior, that changed things. That made it fraud. That made it a crime. So I became a detective. I spent the next 2 weeks obsessively researching Melissa Crawford, Melanie Cross, Melissa Carter, and Miranda Collins. I tracked down social media profiles, old forum posts, news articles. I found 3 confirmed victims. Gerald Hopkins, who lost $300,000. A man named Thomas Chun, who lost $400,000 and his business. And a man named Richard Waverly, who lost over $1 million, his house, and nearly his life, when he attempted suicide after she disappeared. All 3 men had similar stories. Met her online. She was perfect. She moved fast. She integrated herself into their lives and their finances. Then she started asking for money, and when she had taken everything she could, she vanished. I compiled everything into a document, photos showing it was the same woman under different names, screenshots of the victims' testimonies, timelines showing the pattern. It was over 40 pages of evidence, and it was damning, but I knew Dad would not want to hear it. He was in love. He would think I was jealous or overreacting or trying to sabotage his happiness. So I needed a plan. First, I reached out to the 3 victims. I found their contact information through public records and old social media profiles. I sent each of them a careful message explaining that I thought the woman who scammed them was now targeting my father and asking if they would be willing to talk to me. 2 of them responded, Gerald and Thomas. Richard did not reply. and I later found out he had moved to another state and changed his name to escape the shame of what happened. I spoke to Gerald first. He was a 60-year-old retired executive who had been widowed 5 years before he met Melanie. He was still angry, still bitter, still broken. He told me everything. How charming she was. How she made him feel young again. How she slowly isolated him from his friends and family by making them seem jealous or unsupportive. How she always had a crisis that needed money. How he gave and gave and gave because he loved her and thought she loved him. How she disappeared on a random Tuesday, taking his credit cards, his savings, and his dignity. Thomas had a similar story. He was 55, divorced, successful. Miranda, as he knew her, had swept into his life like a whirlwind. She was smart about business, or at least she seemed to be. She gave him advice that actually helped. She made herself indispensable, and then she started asking for loans for her own business ventures that did not exist. He lost $400,000, and his company nearly went under. When he tried to report her to the police, they said there was no evidence of fraud because he had given her the money willingly as gifts or loans. Both men were willing to testify if it came to that. Both men wanted to see her finally face consequences, and both men confirmed, through photos I sent them, that Melissa Crawford was the same woman who had scammed them. I had my proof. Now I needed to show my father. I drove home on a Thursday afternoon, unannounced. I knew Dad would be at work, but I had a key to his condo. I let myself in and waited for him to get home. When he walked in at 6, he looked surprised to see me. "Landon, I did not know you were coming home. Is everything okay?" "We need to talk," I said. "It is about Melissa." His face darkened. "What about her?" I pulled out my laptop and opened the document I had prepared. "Dad, I need you to sit down and look at something." "Landon, if you came here to tell me you do not like my girlfriend." "Dad, please, just look at this. If I am wrong, I will apologize and never bring it up again. But if I am right, this is important." He sat down, reluctant but willing. I showed him everything. The multiple names, the fake social media profiles, the victims' testimonies, the pattern of behavior, the timeline that showed she had done this at least 3 times before. I watched his face as he read. Disbelief, confusion, denial, anger. "This is insane," he said when he finished. "You think Melissa is some kind of con artist? Landon, she is not like this. These could be different women. This could all be a coincidence." "Dad, it is the same woman. Look at the photos. It is her. Photos can be faked. People can look similar. Landon, I know you are worried about me. I know the divorce was hard on you, but you cannot just make up some conspiracy theory because you do not like the fact that I am dating someone." "I am not making this up," I said, my voice rising. "Dad, I have talked to 2 of these men. They confirmed it is the same woman. She has done this before, multiple times. She is going to do it to you." "I think you should leave," he said coldly. "I think you need to take some time to think about why you are so threatened by my relationship. This is not about Melissa. This is about you not being able to accept that your mother and I are no longer together." "Dad, that is not." "Landon, I am serious. Leave. I will call you when I am ready to talk, but right now I need you to go." I wanted to argue. I wanted to force him to see the truth, but I could see in his eyes that he was not going to listen. He had made his choice. He was choosing Melissa over the evidence, choosing love, or what he thought was love, over logic. So I left. I drove back to campus feeling defeated and scared. My father was going to marry this woman. He was going to give her access to everything, and there was nothing I could do to stop him. Or was there? The next day, I called the FBI. It took me a while to figure out who to talk to, but eventually I got connected to a special agent named Sarah Chun who worked on fraud cases. I explained the situation, sent her all my evidence, and told her I thought my father was the next target of a serial con artist. Agent Chun reviewed everything and called me back 3 days later. Mr. Pierce, this is impressive investigative work. You have identified what appears to be a pattern of romance fraud. However, fraud is difficult to prosecute in these cases. Unless we can prove she obtained money through false pretenses with intent to deceive, it is not technically a crime. Many of these cases are civil matters, not criminal. So you cannot do anything. I asked, frustrated. I did not say that. What I said is that it is difficult. However, if we can catch her in the act of fraud, if we can document her making false representations in order to obtain money or access to accounts, that would be criminal. Is your father still in contact with her? As far as I know, yes. Though he is not talking to me right now because I showed him this evidence. Would he be willing to cooperate with an investigation? Probably not, I admitted. He thinks I am making this up because I do not like his girlfriend. Agent Chin sighed. Unfortunately, we cannot investigate without the cooperation of the potential victim. If your father is unwilling to press charges or even acknowledge that he is at risk, there is very little we can do. The best I can offer is that if he does lose money to her, he can file a report and we will investigate then. But prevention is difficult when the victim does not believe they are being targeted. I thanked her and hung up feeling even more helpless than before. The FBI could not help unless Dad lost money first, and by then it might be too late. For the next week, I heard nothing from my father. I texted him. I called him. No response. He was freezing me out. I called Katie, my sister, to see if she had heard from him. She said he was fine, that he and Melissa were doing great, and that he had mentioned I was going through some stuff and needed space. That hurt. Dad had turned me into the problem. He had convinced himself, and everyone else, that I was the one with issues, not Melissa, me. I was running out of options, and then I got a call from an unknown number. "Is this Landon Pierce?" a man's voice asked. "Yes." "Who is this?" "My name is Richard Waverly. You sent me a message a few weeks ago about a woman you thought scammed me. I am sorry I did not respond sooner. I was not in a good place to talk about it. But I have been thinking, and I need to tell you something." Richard was the third victim, the one who had not responded before. I grabbed a pen and paper. "I am listening." "The woman I knew as Miranda Collins, the woman who took everything from me, she did not work alone," Richard said. "She had a partner, a man. She called him her brother, but I do not think they were related. His name was Vincent. At least that is what she called him. He showed up a few months into our relationship. He was supposedly having business trouble and needed help. Between the two of them, they took over $1 million from me. When I finally realized what was happening, when I confronted her, Vincent threatened me. He told me that if I went to the police, if I told anyone what they had done, they would ruin me. They would tell everyone I was a predator who had been stalking Miranda, that I had been inappropriate with her, that I was dangerous. I was so ashamed, so broken, I just let them go. I moved away and tried to rebuild my life. Did you ever report it? No. I was too scared and too humiliated. But Landon, if this woman is targeting your father, you need to know she does not work alone. There is someone else involved. Someone dangerous." I felt cold. "Can you describe Vincent?" Richard described a man in his 30s, tall, dark hair, fit, well-dressed. Could be anyone, but at least I knew to look for a partner. After I hung up with Richard, I started thinking. If Melissa had a partner, when would he appear? Based on Richard's story, it was usually a few months into the relationship. Melissa had been with my father for about 6 months now. Maybe the partner was already in the picture, and I just did not know it. I called Katie again. "Hey, has Dad mentioned Any of Melissa's friends or family? Yeah, actually. Melissa's brother came to visit last week. I met him when I was at Dad's for dinner. Why? My stomach dropped. What was his name? Vince, I think. Or Vincent. He seemed nice. He is staying with them for a while. Something about being between jobs. There it was. The partner. Vincent. Staying at Dad's condo. Already in position to help Melissa take everything. I had to act fast. I called Agent Chen again and told her about Vincent. She said she would look into it. But without Dad's cooperation, there was still not much she could do. So I did something risky. I decided to confront Melissa directly. I drove home again, this time on a Saturday afternoon, when I knew Dad would be at his office, catching up on work. Katie had told me that Melissa and Vincent were going to be at the condo. I figured if I could talk to Melissa alone, maybe I could get her to slip up. Maybe I could record her admitting to something that would constitute fraud. I had a small audio recorder in my pocket, the kind that journalists use. It was not sophisticated, but it would capture conversation. I had no idea if it would be admissible as evidence, but at this point I was desperate. I knocked on Dad's door. Melissa answered, looking surprised to see me. "Landon, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," I said. "Can I come in?" She hesitated, then smiled. "Of course. Your dad is at work, but you can wait for him if you want." I followed her inside. The condo looked different, more lived in. Melissa's stuff was everywhere. Photos of her and Dad on the walls. Her shoes by the door. Her coat on the hook. She had made herself at home. Vincent was sitting on the couch, watching TV. He stood when I walked in, extending his hand. "You must be Landon. I am Vince, Melissa's brother. Good to meet you, man." I shook his hand, studying his face. He looked exactly like Richard had described. Tall, dark hair, fit, probably early 30s. Charming smile, but his eyes were calculating. Cold. "Nice to meet you," I said. "I will leave you two to talk," Vincent said, picking up his phone. "I have to make some calls anyway." He disappeared into one of the bedrooms, closing the door behind him. Melissa sat on the couch and patted the seat next to her. "Sit. Can I get you something to drink?" "No, thanks. I really need to talk to you about some things." "Sure," she said, still smiling. "What is on your mind?" "I know who you are," I said quietly. "I know about Melanie Cross and Miranda Collins and Melissa Carter. I know about Gerald Hopkins and Thomas Chun and Richard Waverly. I know what you did to them, and I know you are doing the same thing to my father." Her smile did not falter, not even a little. "I have no idea what you are talking about." "I have proof," I said. "Photos, testimonies, timelines. I have talked to your victims. I know exactly what you were doing." "Those sound like very serious accusations," she said, her voice calm and measured. "Do you have any evidence that would hold up in court? Because from what I understand, none of those men filed police reports. And even if they had, there was no crime. Just failed relationships. It is sad when relationships do not work out, but that is life. You stole from them." "I accepted gifts from people I was in relationships with," she corrected. "That is not stealing. That is what happens when people are in love. They give each other things. You never loved any of them. You targeted them. You manipulated them. And you are doing the same thing to my father." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "Landon, I understand you are protective of your father. It is actually quite sweet. But the truth is, your father is a grown man who can make his own decisions. He chose to be in a relationship with me. He chooses to trust me. He chooses to build a life with me. And the only person standing in the way of that is you. Because I am trying to protect him from a con artist. Or because you cannot handle that he has moved on from your mother," she said softly. "I know the divorce was hard on you. I know you probably hoped they would get back together. But that is not going to happen. Your father deserves to be happy, and he is happy with me. Why do you want to take that away from him? Because it is not real. You do not love him. I do love him, she said, and for a moment she almost sounded sincere. Your father is an amazing man. He is kind, generous, successful, caring. Any woman would be lucky to be with him, including me. Then why did you try to add yourself to his bank accounts? Her eyes flashed. Just for a second, the mask slipped, and I saw something cold and calculating underneath. But then the smile was back. I never tried to add myself to his accounts. That was a mistake, a technical glitch with the bank. They apologized for the confusion. Right. And Vincent, your brother? Where was he when you were scamming Gerald Hopkins? When you were Miranda Collins, did you have a different brother? Vincent is my brother, she said firmly. I do not know what lies these people told you, but Vincent and I are family. He has been by my side through everything. At that moment, Vincent came back into the room. Everything okay out here? Fine, Melissa said sweetly. Landon was just leaving. He stopped by to say hello. Vincent looked at me, and there was something in his expression that made my skin crawl. A warning, a threat. Yeah, I should go, I said, standing up. But Melissa, this is not over. I am not going to let you hurt my father. You do not have to let me do anything, she said, because I am not hurting him. I am loving him. Maybe someday you will understand the difference. I left feeling shaken. The conversation had not gone the way I hoped. She had been too prepared, too smooth, too confident. And now she knew that I was onto her, which meant she would move faster. She would try to get whatever she could from Dad before I could stop her. I sat in my car for a few minutes, trying to think, and then I realized something. The audio recorder. I had been recording the entire conversation. Maybe there was something in there I could use. I listened to the recording on my drive back to campus. Most of it was just what I remembered. Melissa denying everything, deflecting, turning it around on me. But then, at the very end, there was something. After I said I was going to protect my father, right before she said I did not have to let her do anything, there was a moment. She had glanced at Vincent, and Vincent had said something very quietly. So quietly I had not heard it at the time, but the recorder picked it up. I played that section over and over, turning the volume up, and finally I could make out what Vincent said. Let it go. We will be done and gone in 3 weeks anyway. 3 weeks. They had a timeline. They were planning to take whatever they could get from Dad and disappear in 3 weeks. I immediately called Agent Chun and sent her the recording. She called me back an hour later. Mr. Pierce, this is very helpful. The statement about being done and gone in 3 weeks suggests intent and a timeline. Combined with the pattern you have documented, this could be enough to open an investigation. But I still need to talk to your father. Can you arrange a meeting? He is not talking to me right now, I said, but let me try. I called Katie and explained everything. I told her about Melissa being a con artist, about the other victims, about the recording. She was shocked, then scared. Landon, what if Dad does not believe you? What if he chooses her? Then we lose him, I said, but we have to try. Katie agreed to help. She called Dad and told him she wanted to have a family dinner, just the 4 of us, no Melissa. Dad was reluctant, but agreed. He thought it was about mending fences with me. He had no idea what was really coming. The dinner was set for that Sunday. Agent Chun agreed to come, though she would wait outside until I texted her to come in. The plan was simple. I would present all the evidence to Dad one more time, with Katie backing me up, and if he still did not believe me, Agent Chun would come in and explain the situation from a law enforcement perspective. Sunday came. I drove home with my stomach in knots. This was it, the last chance to save my father before Melissa and Vincent took everything and disappeared. I got to Dad's condo at 6. Katie was already there, looking nervous. Dad opened the door and gave me a stiff hug. "Landon, good to see you." "You too, Dad." "Where is Melissa?" Katie asked. "She is spending the evening with Vincent," Dad said. "I thought we could use some family time. Just the three of us." We sat down to a dinner that Dad had ordered from his favorite Italian restaurant. The conversation was stilted at first. Dad asked about school. I asked about his work. Katie talked about her classes and her friends. We were dancing around the elephant in the room. Finally, I could not take it anymore. "Dad, we need to talk about Melissa." His face hardened. "Landon, I thought we agreed." "Dad, please, just hear me out. I have new information. Important information. I am not interested in your conspiracy theories." "Dad, I talked to 3 men that Melissa scammed," I said. "I have documented proof that she has done this before, under different names, to multiple victims. I have a recording of her partner saying they will be done and gone in 3 weeks. Dad, they are planning to take your money and disappear, and you are running out of time to stop them." "This is insane," Dad said, standing up. "Landon, I do not know what is wrong with you, but this needs to stop. Melissa is not a con artist. She loves me, and I love her. I am going to ask her to marry me next week, and there is nothing you can say that will change my mind." "Dad, no." Katie said, "You cannot marry her. Landon is telling the truth. I have seen the evidence. It is real." "Both of you need to leave," Dad said. "I am done with this. If you cannot be supportive of my relationship, then I do not want you in my life." "Dad, please," I said. "Just talk to one person. There is an FBI agent outside who specializes in fraud cases. She has reviewed all my evidence. She wants to talk to you. 5 minutes. That is all I am asking." "The FBI?" Dad looked shocked. "You brought the FBI into this. Landon, what the hell is wrong with you? I am trying to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life." I shouted, "Dad, please. I am begging you. Just talk to her. If she says I am wrong, I will drop it. I will apologize to Melissa. I will never bring it up again. But if she says I am right, you have to listen." Dad stood there, his face red, his jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he was going to throw me out, but then Katie spoke up. "Dad, please, do it for me. I am scared. I do not want to lose you." Something in Dad's expression softened. He looked at Katie, his baby girl, and I saw the fight leave him. "Fine, 5 minutes. But when she tells you that you are wrong, you both owe me and Melissa an apology." I texted Agent Chun, and a minute later, there was a knock on the door. Dad answered it, and Agent Chun came in, showing her badge. "Mr. Pierce, I am Special Agent Sarah Chun with the FBI. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Can we sit down?" We all sat in the living room. Agent Chun pulled out a folder and began laying out the evidence. The photos showing Melissa under different names. The testimonies from the victims. The pattern of behavior. The timeline. The recording of Vincent saying they would be done and gone in 3 weeks. Dad listened in silence, his face growing paler with every piece of evidence. When Agent Chun finished, she said, "Mr. Pierce, based on what your son has uncovered, I believe you are the target of a romance scam. The woman you know as Melissa Crawford is likely a professional con artist who has done this multiple times before. She and her partner Vincent are planning to extract as much money as they can from you and then disappear, probably within the next few weeks." "This cannot be real," Dad said, but his voice was shaking. "I am afraid it is," Agent Chun said gently. "The evidence is substantial. I recommend that you immediately secure all your financial accounts, revoke any access you have given to Ms. Crawford, and cease all contact with her. I also recommend that you file a police report so we can investigate further." "She said she loves me," Dad said quietly. "She said we had a future together." That is what these scammers do, Agent Chen said. They identify vulnerable targets, usually recently divorced or widowed men with assets, and they create a perfect illusion of love. They are very good at it. It is not your fault for believing her. Dad put his head in his hands. I am such an idiot. You are not an idiot, I said. You are someone who wanted to believe in love. That is not stupid. That is human. How much have I given her? He asked. That is what we need to figure out, Agent Chen said. Have you given her direct access to any accounts? Have you signed over any properties or assets? Have you given her large sums of cash? Dad thought for a moment. I put her on a joint credit card, about $5,000 limit. She wanted me to add her as a beneficiary to some accounts, but I had not done it yet. I was planning to do it after we got engaged. I have given her maybe $10,000 or $15,000 total for various things she said she needed. Her rent, when she was having trouble, car repairs, some medical bills her insurance did not cover. So, maybe $20,000 total? Agent Chen asked. Maybe, Dad said. Oh God, I am so stupid. It could have been a lot worse, Agent Chen said. Your son stopped you before you gave her real access to your assets. If you had married her, added her to your accounts, signed over any properties, you could have lost everything. Dad looked at me. You saved me. I tried to tell you, I said. I am just glad you finally listened. What happens now? Dad asked Agent Chen. Now we document everything, she said. We secure your accounts. We gather evidence. And we try to catch them in the act so we can arrest them. But Mr. Pierce, I need to be honest with you. These cases are hard to prosecute, even with all this evidence. If she has not actually committed fraud yet, if all the money you gave her was given voluntarily, it might not be enough for criminal charges. So she gets away with it? Dad asked angrily. Not if we can catch her trying to commit fraud. Mr. Pierce, would you be willing to cooperate with us? To help us set up a situation where we can catch her in the act? Yes, Dad said without hesitation. Whatever you need. Over the next few days, Agent Chen and Dad worked together to set up a sting operation. The plan was this. Dad would continue acting normal around Melissa and Vincent. He would pretend he still trusted them. He would tell Melissa that he wanted to add her to his accounts and that he had talked to his lawyer about updating his will to include her. This would make her and Vincent think they were about to get access to everything. Meanwhile, Agent Chen would have agents watching Dad's condo. They would record conversations. They would monitor any attempts to access Dad's accounts. And when Melissa and Vincent made their move, when they tried to commit actual fraud, the agents would move in. It was risky. There was a chance Melissa and Vincent would sense something was wrong and disappear before they could be caught. But it was the best shot we had. Dad played his part perfectly. He told Melissa about the will. He gave her documents to sign that he said would add her to his accounts, but were actually fake forms that Agent Chen had created. He acted loving and trusting, and Melissa took the bait. She became more affectionate, more attentive. She and Vincent started talking about a future together, about maybe buying a house, about Dad retiring early so they could travel. She was setting up the big score. And then, exactly 3 weeks after Vincent had said they would be done and gone, everything came to a head. It was a Thursday. Dad told Melissa and Vincent that his lawyer needed them to come sign some final documents at the lawyer's office. Everything was ready, he said. As of tomorrow, Melissa would be his beneficiary, would have access to his accounts, would be legally tied to him. Melissa and Vincent agreed, excited. They did not know that the lawyer's office they were going to was actually an FBI field office made to look like a law office. They showed up on time, dressed nicely, smiling. They were shown into a conference room where Dad was waiting with what they thought was his lawyer, but was actually Agent Chen in a suit. Thank you for coming, Agent Chen said. Before we sign the documents, I need to verify some information. Ms. Crawford, can you confirm your full legal name and date of birth? Melissa smiled. Melissa and Crawford, September 23rd, 1988. And your social security number? Melissa recited a number. Agent Chen typed it into her computer and frowned. That is strange. This social security number is registered to someone named Miranda Collins. Is that an old name of yours? Melissa's smile faltered. No, that must be a mistake. And you, sir, Agent Chen said, turning to Vincent. You are listed as Ms. Crawford's brother. Can you provide your identification? Vincent pulled out his wallet and handed over a driver's license. Agent Chen looked at it and nodded. Vincent Crawford. Thank you. She typed something else into the computer. I see. So Vincent Crawford is also an alias. Your real name is Vincent Rossetti, and you have a record for fraud and identity theft in 3 states. Vincent stood up. I think we are done here. Actually, you are done, but not in the way you think, Agent Chen said. She stood up and opened her jacket, showing her badge. I am Special Agent Sarah Chun with the FBI. You are both under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit theft. The door opened and 2 more agents came in. Melissa's face went white. Vincent tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. They were both handcuffed and read their rights. Melissa looked at Dad, and for the first time, the mask completely dropped. There was no charm, no warmth, no love. Just cold calculation and anger. You knew, she said. I figured it out, Dad said. Or actually, my son figured it out. You underestimated him. This is not over, Vincent said. You cannot prove anything. Actually, we can, Agent Chen said. We have testimony from your previous victims. We have evidence of your prior scams. We have recordings of you discussing your timeline. And most importantly, we have you on tape from the last 3 weeks trying to fraudulently access Mr. Pierce's accounts and making false statements to obtain money. That is all the proof we need. They were taken away. Dad stood there, shaking. I put my hand on his shoulder. It is over, Dad. They cannot hurt you now. I cannot believe I almost married her, he said. I almost gave her everything. But you did not, I said, because you listened. You trusted me when it mattered. Agent Chen later told us that when they searched Melissa and Vincent's belongings, they found evidence of at least 5 other scams in progress. They had been targeting multiple men simultaneously, using different identities, creating elaborate fake lives. The total amount they had stolen over the years was estimated at over $4 million. Melissa's real name was Angela Rossetti. She and Vincent were actually married, not siblings. They had been running romance scams for over 8 years, moving from city to city, identity to identity, target to target. They were professionals, and they were good at it, but they had finally been caught. They were both charged with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and conspiracy. They each faced up to 20 years in prison. The trial took place 6 months later. Gerald Hopkins, Thomas Chun, and Richard Waverly all testified. I testified. Dad testified. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury found them both guilty on all counts. Angela got 18 years. Vincent got 20. As they were led out of the courtroom, Angela looked at me, and she smiled. Not a friendly smile, a smile that said, I almost won. But she had not won. She had lost. And more importantly, my father was safe. In the aftermath, Dad had to do a lot of healing. He was embarrassed that he had been fooled. He was angry at himself for not seeing the signs. He was hurt that someone had manipulated his loneliness and his desire for love. But he was also grateful. Grateful that I had noticed. Grateful that I had investigated. Grateful that I had refused to give up even when he pushed me away. You saved my life, he told me one night a few months after the trial. If you had not done all that digging, if you had not brought in the FBI, I would have married her. I would have given her everything. She would have destroyed me. I am just glad you finally listened, I said. I am sorry I did not listen sooner, he said. I was so desperate to believe I had found someone special that I ignored every red flag. I chose her over you. I will never forgive myself for that. Dad, you were in love, or you thought you were. People do irrational things when they are in love. What matters is that you came around in the end. Because you would not give up on me, he said. Landon, you are a better man at 20 than I am at 52. You have integrity and courage that I clearly lack. You have those things too, I said. You were just vulnerable. She exploited that. It was not your fault. Dad and I rebuilt our relationship over the following months. It was better than before, stronger. We talked more. We were more honest with each other. He learned to trust my judgment. I learned to be more patient with him. Katie was relieved to have her dad back. She had been so scared that we were going to lose him to Melissa. Now we were a family again. As for me, I learned something important through all of this. I learned that being an adult is not about age. It is about stepping up when someone you love is in danger, even if they do not want your help. It is about doing the right thing even when it is hard, even when it costs you something, even when the person you are trying to save pushes you away. I was 20 years old when I saved my father from a con artist. I did not do it because I was brave or special. I did it because he was my dad and I loved him. And sometimes love means protecting people from themselves. The story made the news, not the details of our family, but the arrest of Angela and Vincent Rossetti. The reporters called them the Romance Bandits. They interviewed some of the victims. The story went viral, with people discussing how common romance scams are, how devastating they can be, how we need to protect vulnerable people. Gerald, Thomas, Richard, and the other victims all got some closure from seeing Angela and Vincent finally face consequences. They formed a support group for people who had been scammed, helping others recover from the financial and emotional damage of romance fraud. As for my father, he took a long break from dating. He needed time to heal, to rebuild his trust, to figure out who he was outside of a relationship. He threw himself into his work and his hobbies. He spent more time with Katie and me. He went to therapy to process what had happened. And slowly, over time, he started to forgive himself. Started to believe that what happened was not a reflection of his worth or his intelligence, but simply the result of a skilled manipulator targeting him at his most vulnerable moment. About a year after the trial, Dad met someone, a woman named Patricia, who worked at the library and loved mystery novels and had been divorced for 5 years. She was kind and genuine and had no interest in his money. She had her own career, her own life, her own identity. They took things slow, very slow, and Dad made sure to tell me and Katie about her right away, to introduce us early, to get our opinions. Patricia was nothing like Melissa. She was real, and gradually I watched my father learn to trust again, learn to love again, but this time with his eyes wide open. People sometimes ask me if I regret the way I handled things, if I wish I had approached it differently, if I feel bad about investigating Melissa behind my father's back. The answer is no. I did what I had to do to protect someone I love. Was it invasive? Yes. Was it risky? Yes. Did I violate my father's privacy? Absolutely. But I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Because the alternative was watching him lose everything to a con artist who saw him as nothing more than a mark. I learned something else through this experience. I learned that evil does not always look like evil. Sometimes it looks like love. Sometimes it comes with a beautiful smile and warm eyes and words that make you feel seen and special. Sometimes it comes disguised as exactly what you are looking for, and that is what makes it so dangerous. Angela Rossetti was not a monster with fangs and claws. She was a woman who could make men feel cherished and desired and understood. She studied her targets. She learned their vulnerabilities. She became exactly what they needed her to be. And then she took everything. She was good at it because she had no conscience, no empathy, no moral compass. She saw people as resources to be exploited, and she did not care about the destruction she left behind. But she made one mistake. She underestimated a 20-year-old college student who loved his father enough to become a detective. She underestimated the power of family, the strength of persistence, the importance of paying attention. And that mistake cost her everything. I am 20 years old. I am a college student studying business. I work part-time at a coffee shop. I live in a small apartment with 2 roommates. I am as normal as anyone else my age. But I am also someone who took down a pair of con artists who had been operating for years. Someone who saved his father from financial ruin. Someone who helped put criminals behind bars. And I did it not because I am special, but because I paid attention, because I asked questions, because I refused to accept the easy answers, because when something felt wrong, I did not ignore that feeling. I investigated it. That is the lesson I want people to take from this story. Pay attention. Ask questions. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And do not be afraid to protect the people you love, even if they do not want to be protected. Because sometimes the people we love are their own worst enemies. Sometimes they are so desperate for love, for connection, for meaning, that they will ignore every warning sign. They will choose the illusion over the reality, because the illusion is so much more appealing. And when that happens, when someone you love is walking into danger with their eyes closed, it is your job to open their eyes, even if they hate you for it, even if they push you away, even if it costs you your relationship with them. Because ultimately, it is better to be hated for telling the truth than to be loved while watching someone destroy themselves with a lie. My father almost married a woman who would have destroyed him. She would have taken his money, his dignity, his faith in humanity. She would have left him broken and alone and wondering how he could have been so blind. But she did not get the chance, because a 20-year-old kid with a laptop and a suspicious mind decided to dig deeper, decided to ask uncomfortable questions, decided to be the bad guy in order to save his dad. I do not regret it, not for a second, and I never will. Thank you for listening to my story of growing up faster than I ever wanted to. I have left 2 more stories on your screen, both from young men who learned that sometimes becoming an adult does not happen at 18. It happens the moment your family needs you to be strong. Click on whichever one speaks to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be forced to grow up overnight, that notification bell is waiting. Until tomorrow, remember, age is just a number, but courage defines who you really are.